Have you ever witnessed someone else's success in something that you too are trying to master and wondered, how the heck did they pull that off? Ever feel frustrated that you can't figure out the how to get familiar results because the only available information out there focuses on the what and the why, which you already know, duh? In today's episode, we'll debunk the myths about leveling up our expertise and blow the door off this secret room that has you believing you have to pay a cover charge to become a member or be admitted into this mastery club. I'm excited to bring you these life hacks, which have radically changed my life, as I know they will yours too. Ready for your all access pass to the Mastery Club? Then let's go. In today's episode, you'll gain some insights into using the art of apprenticeship. You'll hear about how I developed the mirror model approach, and you'll learn some tricks to try as you also work to achieve mastery in your own life matters. I also want to give a shout out and a thank you for your patience these past couple of weeks as I navigated some losses and some private family matters. Stay tuned for news on the rescheduled Zero to Clear clinic, which is getting a facelift, as well as the clinic and workshop series that is going to stem out of it. You're not going to want to miss this series if you're ready to go from uncertain to clear on your future and voice as you plan for your personal success. Do you crave better self-esteem and confidence but feel stuck in a fog of uncertainty? If you're ready to gain clarity on your goals and cut yourself free from the fear, self-doubt, and worry holding you back, this show is for you. I'm Jennifer DeBellis, award-winning author, speaker, and clarity coach. I help women like you restore their inner worlds and get clear on their goals to confidently fulfill their greatest desires. Ready to restore your inner warrior? Then turn off those distractions and tune in to this next episode. So today I want to talk to you about apprenticeship and the art of learning from proven models. I know this isn't a new concept to you, but I want to talk about it from a different angle. And I want to share a little bit of backstory about how I actually mastered the process of studying others and how I now teach other educators as well as students and coaching clients how to actually implement some of these strategies in their, particular pursuits, whatever it is that you're trying to master or improve on or just gain a new skill set. The common belief out there, you've probably heard this before, is that it takes approximately 10,000 hours to become an expert or to master a new skill set. That's 10 years if you spend just 20 hours a week on spending quality time practicing this particular skill. So if you think about that, that's a part-time job for 10 years. So if you maybe accelerated that and spent 40 hours a week, you could see how maybe you could start to get really good and have some expert skills at something in just 5 years. But it's not an overnight thing. I mean, it takes time to get good at something. This expert concept ties back to Kay Anders Ericsson's research on elite violinists. So it's not a new concept. It's something that has been around since the beginning of time. Like if you look at historical texts, you can even trace back to Babylon and Egypt, and you can see this kind of apprenticeship practice where individuals are working with a master to learn a craft skill, similar to how we train for skilled trades these days. He noticed in his study was that those who accumulated just roughly 10,000 hours, and in his study, it was by the age of 20. So obviously they were doing it more than 20 hours a week because if you're 20, maybe they started at 10, but they were probably investing a little bit more than 20 hours a week in practicing and studying the masters and how they particularly got better at these skills and playing the violin. That's a lot of practice. And that saying that practice makes perfect kind of stems back to these concepts. The ultimate rule of thumb is to practice the right skills. So to spend quality of time on task, not just the quantity of time. So if you're thinking you can just, plug it into ChatGPT and you can just, like listen to a couple things when you're on a run or you're in your car and then everything will become clear to you. You may learn some things along the way, but you really got to get in there, get your hands dirty, and you have to practice some things. That's how we get better at things. We practice. But before we can practice, we have to learn what to do in that practice. I learned about this quality over quantity concept when I went back to college as an older student. So I came back to college to study writing, and I had bad experiences with learning mastery in my childhood. So I had really bad habits in my childhood. One story that kind of sticks out to me is when I was growing up, I played the clarinet all the way through until I started high school. So I played the clarinet. I was really good at some of the basic skills. So the teachers were really like, oh my God, she's going to be a great clarinet player. And then what happened was, as my peers were going home and practicing the actual sheet music and learning to master a lot of the different skills that they were being taught, along with learning to read the notes and play the notes for the length and the duration and in the sequences and patterns that were in the music, I was at home deconstructing songs and learning how to play the notes in the songs. So I was getting really good. So I had the breath capacity and I could really execute the notes really well, but I really didn't know the notes. I knew the sound and I could recreate and memorize the sounds. So I would always be in the study room. And he used to baffle my teacher in the ninth grade because he would say, I don't get it. You play flawlessly. Like you execute the notes exactly the way we want you to execute the notes, but you can't read sheet music to save your life. It doesn't make any sense. And so, of course, I was a kid back then. We never really had those conversations. My mom at parent teacher conferences would say, oh, she's practicing all the time. We hear it. When you're learning an instrument, there's a lot of squeaking and repetition, and it drives everybody in the house nuts because they have to listen to you poorly playing until you start to get better at playing. And even when you get good at it, they're listening to the same sequence over and over and over again. And so, nobody could put their finger on it. And it was when I came back to college as a mature student that I kind of looked back at that and started to learn a couple of things, what I'm going to share with you, that was like, oh my gosh, right? What not to do was my childhood experience. Because while I was getting really good at some of the skills, I wasn't learning the very practical and important things to be successful in all areas of playing the clarinet. I was just having fun. I wanted to play Bon Jovi. So I was learning Bon Jovi songs. So, that was the trade-off. And I couldn't, I didn't have the maturity to know that I needed to do maybe both, maybe a little bit of both. And so when I came back to college as a writer, I started studying the classical, celebrated authors and poets. And I was also studying people who apprenticed their work and kind of mimicked their work, put their own spin on it. And so I was kind of like always like fascinated with how are they doing these things. So I knew what they were doing. I knew why they were doing it, but I couldn't put my finger on how exactly they were doing it. And maybe you can relate to that. There's so many times where we see someone from a distance and we're like, oh, I could do that, or I'm already trying to do that. And we see what they're doing and they're telling us why they're doing it, but then we can't quite execute it the same way because we just don't know how. And maybe there isn't a system out there, or maybe there isn't something out there that's easily accessible or maybe affordable that is going to take us through the how. And that was what I found myself kind of going through as a student. So I had to be really creative to try to find ways to figure out that how and then to practice and practice and practice. And, something that I started also during that time, I was taking other classes, obviously, and I took an art history class and I started learning about the artist apprenticeships and how, we're talking about like doing something for 10,000 hours and doing it part-time. And artists were required to study, to do like an understudy and to apprentice under a master artist. Even when they went to college or school to learn the art, they were still having to study an artist for 4 to 8 years before they could ever become their own journeyman and even try to create their own art. So, I mean, think about that. 4 to 8 years. Here, we live in a time where we're like, what can I learn in 4 minutes? Like our attention span is like, tell me everything I need to know and how I need to do it in 4 minutes. Like, it doesn't work that way. And then we're like, okay, in 4 minutes, tell me what I need to know and what I can accomplish in a week, maybe a month. We're not looking at the long-term investment in ourselves. I mean, just change your perspective a little bit. It isn't just about like mastering the skill. If it's super important to us and something we see ourselves doing long term, we want to get good at it. We want to get so good at it that we could teach the understudies how to do this thing. That's how good I wanted to be when I came back to college. And I wanted to teach also. I didn't just want to write, I wanted to teach other writers how to write. And so I had this very particular focus, and I had to figure out how to give myself this hands-on experience and how can I witness the how of the way particular writers were doing things in order to be able to implement these things on my own. You can read a lot of craft books and essays, and there are a lot of great ones out there. But sometimes if you don't quite understand some of the key stripped down basic things that go into that, you can have people interpreting and telling you how they interpreted this how and maybe, their own version of it, but it might not totally click because you yourself are not doing the studying part. So there's a real power in picking someone who you're like, I love what they're doing, or picking a group of individuals. Like in my case, I was studying a group of classic poets and authors and short story writers, and they were all inspiring me in different ways. And I was really dissecting. And I didn't realize at the time that I was kind of apprenticing and developing this skill set in this model that I now teach. I just knew that I had to find a way. And I hadn't found the way out there in the way I needed it. And so I was inventing it. And, maybe that speaks to you because I know throughout my whole lifetime, that's kind of something that I've done is if it doesn't exist, or a lot of times I'm just broke chick problems, I can't afford it. So it's like, okay, if I can't just buy the solution to this and get all that, great education, how can I create a meaningful education for myself, anyway? So I needed this hands-on exposure and I needed to witness how, but all these writers were dead. They no longer existed. So I couldn't just go back and ask them. And a lot of times we weren't having very craft specific conversations. So I set out to kind of read. And I was analyzing a lot of text. That's what happens when you're an English major. And I was still seeing a lot of the what and the why. I was going back and forth between the what and the why. And I was really struggling with that how. And then I started reading the craft essays and the craft books and taking craft classes. And I was getting a little bit of the how, but it still wasn't entirely clicking. And so as I started really loving particular stories. So there's one story in particular, and I do teach this story, Hills Like White Elephants by Hemingway. That is a story that I was exposed to 25 anthologized, apprentice pieces. So 25 that I know about, writers did their own spin on Hills Like White Elephants and they became anthologized. So they got them or they were published. I don't want to say they were all anthologized. These works were published and they're out there for us to find. And I started thinking that's really great, but I don't want to spend my journeyman time after I start to do these skills. I want to tell my own stories and I want to kind of control what I'm talking about. So the topic itself. So as I started to wrestle with that, I started to come up with this model where it was like, okay, I can do the same thing, even if I don't have access to all these masters now, even if some things aren't clicking in place for me, I can somehow create a learning model here that I can learn from this short story that I love, that I can learn from this poet or this poem that I really, really love. And so I started thinking, let me build my own little mini lesson models and my little shadowing. I was going to shadow these writers and poets to learn everything I could about how they were doing these, how they were pulling off these incredible stories and poems. And believe it or not, it's a lot easier than you think it would be. And I learned so much by coming to this season with the heart of an apprentice and the mind of an apprentice. And so I still got stuck and struggled, but I started to develop this learning model, which I call mentor text peer models. And it's something that I now go around to symposiums or conferences, and I teach other teachers how to help students create these mentor models. And I also help other writing students and even coaching students use these mentor mirror models to create all types of plans and practices so that they can also master whatever it is they're setting out to master. And, the interesting thing that kept spinning in my head and something that I talk about, and I'm going to talk about in future episodes, is copycat syndrome. So there is a fine line that I knew also, not that I just didn't want to get stuck on the same topics. I didn't want someone to look at my work and say, oh, that's an illusion and an entire copycat version of Hills Like White Elephants, or, Sylvia Plath's Lady Lazarus, or some of my favorite works. The Telltale Heart by Poe. Some of these stories that I was really like, oh my God, I want to do that. I want to do that as well as they did it. And I want people years from now, when I'm long gone, to look at that and say, how the heck did she do that? And want to figure it out for themselves too. Not just to enjoy the story on the surface, but to really kind of, you know, be seeking out that craftsmanship. It's just like when you see a great piece of furniture and you're like, wow, this isn't just like some, mass manufactured piece, and then you start appreciating the craftsmanship. So I was like, I want that same thing. So mimicry is as fine as I learn how to do this particular thing, but I don't want anyone to ever look at my work and say, oh, you copied this person. And you just like change the names and change the era. I just didn't want that. Don't get me wrong. There's a place for fan fiction and there's a place for illusion. But at that time, when I was really starting to just branch out on my own and say, I have all these stories that I want to tell. And I have themes and things that I want to use to tell those stories, and they don't match. Like you could spend a lifetime trying to match or find a perfect match for your themes and the way that you can put those together and the character set and the atmosphere and all those things. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to put my unique voice and spin on these things. And so I was like, again, I don't want anybody saying I was a copycat. That was a huge thing for me. I do not want, if I'm borrowing ideas, I don't want anyone to look at it and say you're plagiarizing or you're unoriginal. Like, so that was kind of a motivation for me, kind of running in the background. Then I had this vision that, oh my gosh, I could dissect all these things. And I started doing it and I started having amazing results. I could dissect all of these things in a poem or a short story, like all the craftsmanship that's in it, all the literary elements that are at work, all of the pairings and the patterns, the different cast of characters, the point of view, all of these different things. And I started to, like, if you can imagine a puzzle and you put this puzzle together. And like if you're doing a 1,000-piece puzzle or even a 10,000-piece puzzle, you can start to put a mass of like colored and patterned and shaped things together, but you still don't fully see the whole picture. And then eventually you put the whole thing together and it just feels like such an accomplishment, right? When you do that. And then you have the picture. It's someone else's picture. So someone else like took a picture, painted a picture, and then had it reproduced onto this puzzle or had it reproduced onto a cuttable board that was going to be turned into a puzzle. And so I thought, what if we use that concept where we try to piece together all of the pieces that we can find and that we can figure out and piece it together and then peel off the picture when we're all done. So that now you're just left with this cardboard, no picture, but you have all the pieces. And you know exactly how the pieces fit together because you just fit them together. And now they're sitting here together. And then you take your story, your unique vision, your image, and you put it on top of this puzzle. Now you have, no one sees the pieces. No one's going to see a puzzle of kittens in a meadow of sunflowers and then an auto show car puzzle next to each other and say, oh, the same press took each one of those images and created the puzzle pieces. No one's going to do that. So that was that mimicry thing that I was after. And then I would show people, this is how you can create the puzzle and then you can take the face off and put your own unique face on it. And so this mentor text mirror model concept has been a model that I use in every area of my life. I don't just teach other teachers and students and help coaching clients utilize this, and I'm here today sharing it with you. I practice it in every area of my life. If I'm trying to get good at something, we don't always have to implement really powerful strategies and practices in our life just to become an expert or a master at it. So even just to go out and have fun doing sports and things outdoors that I love to do, it's applicable in every area of our life, and we don't have to become expert. The fact of the matter is, is that it's such a usable model. And it's such a usable model, whether we're trying to learn a new skill set, activity, or even profession. So like, just imagine all the gray area in between that. So your challenge for this week is to try this out for yourself. When you change your focus and perspective, what can you see that shows you how someone is doing what they're doing and also how they're doing it so well? Not just what they're telling you. Really look closely and everywhere you can to assess and deconstruct their process, the different tools that they use, and even who they learned from. So people are out there sharing so much, even in social media posts, people share more, and you just have to learn how to read between the lines. In the graphic novel world, we call that the gutter space, the space that we have to navigate between frame to frame, and there's story and there's narrative and there's details that are in there that we're smart enough to pick up on. And you have to kind of do that same thing. So you have to look at it like you're following along and you're just looking in that gutter space and looking everywhere. And I don't want you to think about it like you're cyber stalking, but when we appreciate something about someone, don't we already do that? Don't we try to learn as much as we can about that person and maybe what kind of work they're creating now? Maybe if it's like somebody we like their writing, we're like, I want to read everything they ever wrote. And so we go on that. But as we're looking at it as the apprentice, we're at a different perspective. We're at a different angle. We're not just looking at what they did and why they did it. We're trying to learn from them. How did you accomplish all of these things that we really admire? And we're not going to just settle for what they tell us. So that whole show don't tell, that really comes into play here. You're really looking for all the ways that you can benefit from them showing. And I know like sometimes it's hard, but again, you're just looking like if they're mentioning, even in the dedication of a book, they're thanking mentors or editors, or they're thanking the classics that they studied, like that's a clue. You're kind of on a scavenger hunt and you're looking for clues maybe, and then you take those down the rabbit trail and you see where they lead you. And it's really what you make of it. So you're kind of creating your own learning model. So I'm really challenging you to do that. And then as you're doing that, you're creating that puzzle piece, or you're creating that puzzle and putting all the pieces together. So you're collecting the pieces and then you're putting them all together. And then ultimately, when you're all done, once you're like, okay, I've accomplished it, now you're going to peel that face off of the puzzle and you are going to create your own face. So maybe you don't already have the whole face of what you want and you're just going to paste it on there. You might have to hand paint like they're individual tiles. You might have to hand paint on those pieces until they make the picture. And, either way you look at it, you are spending that time with the how. And then you might have to repeat some things over and over and over again. That's also what happens is we're spending quality time. We're also going to fail a lot. And we're going to learn far more from our failures and things that just don't go quite right than we do from our successes. And you have to make space and time and emotional capacity for that, because that's where your real personal growth is going to come. And that's where that personal success is going to be sustainable, because you are open and willing to learn from how things didn't go as expected, just like a science experiment. And that's going to sear into your memory forever. It's going to tattoo itself in there, permanent ink, okay? So this week, I want you to try these things, and I even encourage you, if you feel really excited about what you come up with this week, next month, it doesn't matter. Like pop a comment in here or send me a message. The link to the website is in the show notes below, but it's www.restoreYourInnerWarrior.org. And at the bottom of that page is a subscribe button, but you can always contact me that way. You can send me whatever that way. If you say, I don't want to be added to your email list, but I want to share this success story with you, or I just want to share my process, shoot me a message and I'll give you a shout out and maybe even give you a spotlight on a future episode. Maybe I'll build a whole episode around it depending on what you share. So please, if you have something you want to share about your success or even your struggle, maybe you're like, okay, I hit a road bump and I don't know how to get over this road bump. Shoot me a message, leave me a comment. Let's keep going on this conversation, because we can also learn from each other through the struggle. through the messy middle of our experiences. So instead of like throwing glitter up into the wind and hoping something catches, let's shine together as we find our way through things. So I hope you have a blessed and beautiful week until we meet again. Well, girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, follow my channel and share it with friends who also want to restore their self-worth and confidence. And if you're ready to get clarity and big picture vision on your goals, consider booking a one-on-one coaching session with me. Find a link in the show notes below to book a session. And as you go through your week, may your empowered spirit, heart, and mind guide you. Catch new episodes every Saturday. Ciao.